Golden State Media Concepts Sci-Fi Podcast. Together we dive into the world of sci-fi and science fiction. From episodes of Star Trek, Star Wars, to The Walking Dead, Resident Evil, all the hot new science fiction movies from the back doors of Marvel or DC. The Golden State Media Concepts Sci-Fi Podcast. You'll never look at science fiction the same way again.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Golden State Media Concepts Sci-Fi Podcast. It's Drew, as always, hanging out with you today. And today's topic I want to get into, because we've been talking about new movies that are coming out, and of course I'm going to review some that are coming out here later in the month. But we had started a bit on some themes. Our last show, I basically talked about the Marvel Cinematic Universe and getting everything caught up. But today's show, I want to go back to the topic, not necessarily dealing with a theme, but now we're going to talk about characters. And rather than just talking about the leads of these stories, we're going to talk about the characters that have become more interesting and more beloved than the focus of the show. Now, the only catch, the only hitch that I'm putting on myself is we can't go into the main villain. All right, so I'm not going to talk about how Hannibal Lecter is the more popular character than Clarice Starling. I'm not going to talk about how, that Heath Ledger's Joker was more beloved or interesting or famous than Christian Bale's Batman, or Darth Vader's more popular than Luke Skywalker. I'm not going to talk about the main villain as being the standout or the best or becoming more popular. Of course, Star Wars will be a part of this show because there are a couple of characters from that franchise that are more popular than our hero. And it's just something that happens if you take a look at the people that lead these sort of series and sagas are kind of vanilla, and we see a journey with them that these side characters, should they go on a journey, they already have a bit of an established personality. And it's those personalities that have to carry through and change very little by comparison to our hero, because it has to be something familiar and it's something that keeps them honest, those kind of characters. Pretty much like everybody from Harry Potter is more beloved and popular than Harry Potter himself. At least I would put that to the point. But starting out on today's show, I want to talk about Daryl Dixon, the good old boy from The Walking Dead. In my opinion, far more beloved and far more popular than that of Rick from the show. And it started off really, if you remember in the first season, Daryl and his brother Merle, they were pitted as really the bad guys in the first couple of episodes, and eventually kind of got formed into the group. And then Merle died, and now Daryl had 3-4 brothers, and now he's the only one alive. He's a tracker, he's a hunter, he's brash, he's, foul-mouthed, he's aggressive, not as much as Merle, but he's fairly aggressive. And he's really taken on the personality that people who love the show keep with. And way so much more than Rick, who really just seems to be more interested in where is he getting his next piece of tail in the next place. Really, The Walking Dead is about a group of people who survive the apocalypse, and they just move into these locations and wreck everything. Rick and his crew just destroy everywhere they go, into all under the guise of, we've been out there and therefore we know more than you. And while he's doing that and Rick's trying to run the show, Daryl has been that sort of taking from the milieu of the Han Solo character that has his beliefs and has this way about him that there's a vulnerability and a toughness that a toughness that is seemingly more tough than Rick's. And these types of personality traits really in the supporting cast have to be so blatant and so strong because they don't have as much focus paid attention to them during the show. So when they come up and now it's Daryl's turn, okay? What do we know about Daryl? He's this, that, and the other, and therefore he has to say something that is indicative of that. And so we're seeing whenever Daryl's on screen, really people are drawn to him. Now he's gotten a little bit, I wouldn't say softened, but he's gotten more open to being a little bit more sensitive as he gains these relationships with some of the female characters and gives him hope, really kind of takes him away from the mindset that he had when he was growing up with his brothers, and since the post-apocalypse. And, and it wasn't easy. I mean, he's, like I said, he's the sole survivor of the Dixon clan now at this point. But he's mostly known for being a badass character with the crossbow. Norman Reedus, the actor that plays him of Boondock Saints fame, does a really great job, and it requires, again, to be sort of a heightened type of character where he's brutally honest and a lot of times brutal to not just the living and but to the dead as well. His character is one that's developing to a relationship level of getting along with these people, while Rick seems to be more about finding a way to control the group and maintain this survivor status, but having to be the leader of it. And people eventually they get tired of that, and so they really gravitate towards somebody like Daryl, who you can see a change as these seasons move on, but he maintains that posture of being really honest and not seemingly motivated by anything greater than that, than of just surviving and maintaining those relationships with the people you're surviving with, so the human race can survive. And his character, I mean, really, we'd hope that they never get to a point where they're going to kill someone like that off, because he's essentially the anchor of that show. And when you look at a driving force of it, I mean, of course they're going to continue to pursue the story of Rick, but when the whole group is considered to be together, people are really tuning in to enjoy seeing what Daryl does, and hopefully that develops more. What is the end of The Walking Dead? And that's a question that has to be answered by way of, do the humans lose, or can something occur to weed out the dead? Because this is a series, and you could of course just cut a series off with no resolution, but ultimately that has to come to an end. And we're not talking about something like The Sopranos, where there's a family and America just keeps on going without, the leader of that family. This is about survival of the human race. So what happens with the human race compared to the zombies? And tell you, Daryl's, more interested in making sure that the zombies get killed than anybody else is. So what happens to this show? What happens to the human race? What happens to the walkers? I mean, and how much longer? How much tread has this show got on the tires? And it's still an amazingly popular show. It has a spinoff, Fear the Walking Dead. But those questions have to be answered. And we were getting a little bit of insight on what was going on really at the end of the first season and the second when they were in the CDC. But now it's a survival tale. And where is it all going? And that's a question that has to be answered. I would hope they start pointing towards that here in the next season or two, or else it's just going to be almost like a sitcom where it just exists to perpetuate the next episode in the circumstance, and there's no growth and there's nothing else going on. So hopefully we see the scope get a little bit bigger as far as The Walking Dead's concerned, and more. We're hoping fortune that befalls Daryl as he goes through the series, because I gotta say he's definitely the most popular character from that show, and he's not even the main character. So that's number one. All right, that concludes this first segment of the show. Again, talking about characters that are more popular than our hero, but can't use the main villain. And wanted to first go off on a show basis because there's usually a new big bad every season as far as The Walking Dead's concerned. So first, we got Daryl Dixon, a cornerstone of The Walking Dead. That's our first character. All right, you're listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Sci-Fi Podcast. We'll be right back.
Tired of searching the vast jungle of podcasts? Now listen close and hear this out. There's a podcast network that covers just about everything that you've been searching. Hey! The Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network is here. Nothing less than a podcast bliss with endless hours of podcast coverage. From news, sports, music, fashion, cooking, entertainment, fantasy, football, and so much more. So stop lurking around and go straight out to the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. Guaranteed to fill that podcast itch. Whatever it may be. Visit us at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter, and download us on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Google Play.
All right, and welcome back. This is the Golden State Media Concepts Sci-Fi Podcast. We're talking about practice. No, we're not talking about practice. We're not even talking about a game. We're talking about characters. We're talking about supporting casts that have become more beloved, more famous, more well-liked than the hero of our stories. First, we just talked about Daryl Dixon from The Walking Dead. The next, we're going to go back. It not just applies to the most recent films that have been made, but the old cartoon show as well. I'm talking about Snake Eyes from G.I. Joe. This might be a little because we just jumped from Walking Dead to G.I. Joe. All right, how would we get there? This is how we get there. Snake Eyes, I mean, the fan favorite, hands down the most popular character from G.I. Joe is the mute ninja master that is Snake Eyes. And that's going back the original cartoon show. Again, it really characters like Duke and Lady J and Roadblock and all those people that talk. I mean, Duke is essentially the main character of the show, as he was the first G.I. Joe flick. And then in the second one, it was Roadblock, played by The Rock. But still, people cared more. When The Rise of Cobra, the first film that came out, when they were doing the pre-production, the stills that they had put out first for public relations purposes was Snake Eyes. It was Ray Park in costume, if you recall. The three poses, him holding the swords, him holding the guns. That was the hype starter for this film franchise because they knew that Snake Eyes is the franchise. And it's weird to say, like, you don't normally say that about something like this. When it comes to, if you're going to market something like Star Wars, this is, you want something like, oh, it's a shot of, this is Luke Skywalker and him holding the lightsaber, stuff like that. Or of the bad guy, oh, this is Darth Vader in this thing, or whoever the bad guy is, Kylo Ren. He was the guy when they were pushing the new Star Wars that was something that got you on, to the hype. But with G.I. Joe, it wasn't Duke. It wasn't even Cobra. It was Snake Eyes. And going back, it's that strong silent type that people seem to love, and it's the seeming perfection of the character, and just honestly, it's badassness factor, just like Daryl Dixon. It's Snake Eyes. He's the master. He's unflappable. He's good with the guns. He's good with the swords. He doesn't talk. He just kicks major tail, and that's all he does. And he's not the leader, like he's the guy. There's always in like the westerns or in the martial arts movies or the common big action ones, the guy who's leading the operation, he's like the face of it, but he's not the guy that you are concerned with. He's not like Jaws or Odd Job. The guys that are the danger, like, there's the guy that's running the whole show, and of course he's dangerous to a point, but it's that sort of sidekick, bodyguard, henchman, like that's the guy that's going to have to go out there and really tangle up with the bad guy and give him the biggest run for his money. And at that point, it's just downhill from there in most cases. And Snake Eyes is that guy. He's the jobber. He's the dude that if they need something incredibly difficult to be done, and to be done so precise and to be done so quietly, they get Snake Eyes. My one quibble with Snake Eyes always was, or at least since I read his origin story in the comics, was I was prepared for his story. He's a ninja. And it's going to be, like maybe the background of where he's from, a Japanese kid that was raised. I was looking for some kind of lineage like that. And it ended up just being that Snake Eyes is just a blonde-haired, blue-eyed white dude. I mean, and it was shocking to me that the people that were involved in this were going to, and I'm not usually one that cries a bunch of hey now business about whitewashing in Hollywood and all that other junk. I'm normally not that guy. And this is in comic format, and usually in the comics they don't care about skin color or anything like that, because unfortunately the demographics and the attention paid to comics is not so under the microscope as film is. But in the comics, they even did this, and I was upset. Now, when they cast Ray Park to play Snake Eyes in the movies, I just thought, okay, well, maybe they just don't go into the background of this character, and he only exists as an adult, that they can get away with that. Because I mean Ray Park's awesome, and he studied a lot of Eastern style martial arts. That's really why they like him. He's a tall guy. I mean, he sort of fit the physical bill. And then they went into that flashback scene with him first meeting Storm Shadow when they were kids, and it kind of, he was a little bit darker. I don't know. They didn't go too much into it. I'm glad they stayed away from that. Because it really just would have been unfortunate to have this character that, I like the idea more of him not having an origin. I honestly didn't want to know about where he came from there, because the fact you never saw his face, the fact that he never spoke, the fact that all he was just this silent master, and the dude that can do incredible things, that was awesome. That was the appeal. The mystery was part of the appeal. And not even just from when he was all dressed in black. Remember that period where he was wearing like the like a blue sweater and the vest, and kind of looked like goggles, like ski goggles and stuff like that. It was a very brief period. And then they ultimately brought back the all the black garb. But he was still mysterious, and people liked that about Snake Eyes, and the fact that he could physically do anything. And you got Duke, who of course is, he's a great soldier and a good leader, but he's kind of vanilla. And that was Snake Eyes. We knew such little about him, knew so little. But from what we were gathering, it didn't seem so vanilla. He was so multi-dimensional to us in our minds, even though we had very little to go off of. Just basically, the performance. He was like Worf and Data, like put together, from Star Trek. Just this sort of enigma, but was so respected and could handle any business. And he's definitely one of those. Probably, if we're looking back as far as early in my childhood, he's the first to me that stands out as really being a character that is beyond or more beloved or more popular than the main guy. And you could argue in G.I. Joe, since they had a bunch of episodes that focused on different characters, whether there is a main guy, but it ultimately has to come down to, you got to agree that Duke is the main guy. And especially if you're going to go look at the film series, there is a main guy in the first and the second. It's not the same because Duke obviously dies in the second one, but he is the main guy in the first one, and Roadblock is the main guy in the second one, and it's still all about Snake Eyes. And when the second one came out, right with that picture of Dwayne Johnson holding the big old gun, the next one was the redesign of the Snake Eyes costume. And the trailer literally could have just been Snake Eyes doing cool stuff, and I would have been satisfied with it when he's running on the side of the mountain. So, Snake Eyes, number 2 side character that has been lifted above the main character. So, all right, that concludes our second segment. We're going to come back with possibly the biggest standout of this list, and you shouldn't be surprised. And this is the Golden State Media Concepts Sci-Fi Podcast. We'll be right back.
Are you looking for help for your fantasy football team? Check out the GSMC Fantasy Football Podcast. Get today's best advice on who to start, who to sit, even who you should draft. From sleeper picks to red-hot lineups, they got it all covered for you. That's gsmcpodcast.com/fantasy-football-podcast. We'll cover traditional leagues, dynasty, PPR, even IDP leagues. When you need fantasy help, there's just one show to hit up. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit gsmcpodcast.com for more info.
All right, we are back, and we are talking about side characters. We're talking about the right-hand men, essentially, of a lot of these series that are more popular than the guy in the middle. We started off with Daryl Dixon from The Walking Dead, then we got into Snake Eyes from the G.I. Joe franchise. Now, we're going to go into Star Wars, but I'm not going to talk Han Solo. You might have thought I was going to talk Han Solo about being more popular than Luke Skywalker. Obviously, he has to be. I mean, when I was growing up, if you wanted to play Star Wars and talk about who's going to be who, you kind of fight to be Han. No one's really clamoring to be Luke. And that's nothing to take away from Luke Skywalker, but, Han was just cooler. And Han got the girl. And Han's got the ship. And he's got Chewie. He's just cooler. Far more popular, I would say. And there are some of these characters that, not in Star Wars, but in science fiction, where you could argue. I would argue that Doc Brown's more popular than Marty McFly. And you can come fight me, bro. I don't care. Yeah, so I would. But some of these far and away obvious, and the one that we're going to conclude the show here with is that of Boba Fett, right? And Boba Fett is the quintessential minor character that has taken on such a cult-like following, and there is no character who has done so little to become so big in the eyes of the fans. In the original Star Wars series, Boba Fett is on screen for a combined maybe 2 minutes. He's Boba Fett is hardly in the movies. He's there. They kind of pan around him when Vader's talking to the bounty hunters. He gets his most screen time in Empire Strikes Back, where he's at Cloud City. They cut again to him. He's no good to me dead. Then you see him walk into Slave One. Really, the only time you ever see Slave One. He's in it for a second in Return of the Jedi. He flies over to the thing, and the next he's getting eaten, and that's it. Maybe 2 minutes. Maybe not even that. Maybe under 2 minutes. It sure as hell ain't over. And then he's a little kid in the prequel, and that's another terrible thing is that his use in the prequel, he gets more screen time as a child in the prequels than he ever did in the original series. But there is just this cult of personality behind Boba Fett, and that was not just perpetuated. I mean, it hardly was perpetuated at all by his presence in the films. It was really cultivated in the books that had come out post Star Wars, that writers had gotten into who Boba Fett was and where he came from and his tales of just awesomeness. It was from the books that had kind of risen up into the mainstream and made him cool. And of course, the more you want to push the character, the more you got to get his brand out there. And it was just the look of him was something that really helped along. It was the helmet, and he didn't talk a lot, and his voice was really scratchy and cool, and he had this cool laser blaster that had a buttstock, kind of like a rifle buttstock, and the ship was really cool. The Slave One, it would sort of land on its back, and when it took off, it sort of flew like another mask. It, came at you, and the Mandalorian, the symbol, of the tusked animal and the armor that he had. I mean, the mythos of Boba Fett really comes from the books that had just come out, because you got so little. I mean, they literally only mention him by name in Return of the Jedi. I mean, if there are some other huge Star Wars geeks that are out there that want to hit me up on Twitter or whatever, or write into us and tell me about where else in the movie do they ever say the words Boba Fett. To me, I can only think of Return of the Jedi. To me, I can only think of the third film where they actually say who this guy is. And he's in all three. But you don't even know his name. You don't even. To me, I didn't even know his name. I mean, it was told to me, but you don't hear it till Return of the Jedi, till Han, Boba Fett. Where? And that's it. Then it's done. Then he's gone. So for that such little screen time, but to make such an impact, to just be a cultural phenomenon. To be such a minor, we're not even talking about minor, we're talking about minor character. I mean, less than Lando, less than Yoda, most characters don't appear in that series for very long, but there is nobody that is as big as Boba Fett that had done so little in a series. 3 movies to basically get on screen for, like I'm saying, maybe 2 minutes. And he's huge. He's huge. People love to cosplay as him. They love to take that design that he had, like the helmet, and like redo it with some cool, new designs, new paint and everything. The action figures have always sold well. On my old car, I had a nylon sticker with Boba Fett. I mean, I'm a Boba Fett guy. I love Boba Fett, and just the cultural impact that he's had. Boba the Fett. That annoying song that came out. What was that? MC Chris. God, it was annoying. but he's so incredibly popular. And if you ask anybody like, well, why do you like him so much? And they might go on to the aesthetic, but if you tell them like the memories they have of Boba Fett in the film, there's not a lot to go on. But yeah, he's so huge. He's super big for 2 minutes. The level of fandom to that one character. And I'm pretty sure a lot of people that love Boba Fett had not read the books. They don't know about where he comes from. They don't know anything. Like, from what I was told, my dad was like, yeah, he wears that helmet and the mask because he's so hideous, like, to take it off, and they kind of jacked with that in the prequels, where it's really just what his dad wore and looked like, and then he went on with. I mean, they might have botched that up for the fans of the deeper mythos of the character, but ultimately they don't know all of that stuff about him. They just know that he looks cool and he sounds cool and just is cool. And it's the strong, silent type. Not as silent as Snake Eyes, obviously. Nobody's as silent as Snake Eyes. But to him to come in and it's the bounty hunter. And he's got that kind of side cape that's super cool. But he's a bounty hunter and he's trying to get Han Solo. He doesn't want to get involved in all this business with Luke Skywalker and all this. He just wants to take Solo by hook or by crook back to Jabba so he can get his reward. And that was like a through line. That's a through line in these things. Like, oh, well, Luke's learning how to be a Jedi and to combat the Empire and all this other stuff. Oh, but there's also this guy who's trying to get after Han Solo because he owes a dude money. And that's just another cool aspect. And it goes, I mean, Boba Fett's not after Luke Skywalker. He's just after Han Solo, who's another character who's just way more popular than the hero that goes through the journey. So, Boba Fett, number 3 in the segment, but number 1 in your hearts. All right. And that concludes our show for today. I've had a lot of fun talking about this stuff, and I hope you have a bit of fun listening to it. This is the Golden State Media Concepts Sci-Fi podcast. You can check us out on GSMCpodcast.com or on iTunes, or really on a lot of the formats where you can get podcast subscriptions. We can also not only get this show, but other fine programming. You can follow us on Facebook and or Twitter as well. I am Drew. You have been wonderful. Thanks for hanging out with me. Peace.